Hey guys, my name is Jed Zuiza, and this is my YouTube presentation for Intercultural Communications. So I'm going to talk a little bit about dealing with foreigners when English isn't their first language. A little bit of backstory. My first job after high school was at a family resort in Highgate, Vermont. It's called the Tyler Place Family Resort. We employ about 60% Europeans through this company. I don't understand how it works, but it's a lot of Eastern Europeans, Hungarians, Germans, Polish, Slovenians, and a lot of them don't speak English as their first language. And my job was I was a bicycle mechanic, and the resort was small enough where people didn't need to drive, so they would walk or ride bikes. And the first place they would go was to see me to get a bicycle so they could, travel around the property. And it was the first time I'd ever dealt with speaking with others from, another country and, trying to get past that communication barrier, which was a lot more difficult than I expected it to be. My boss, actually, my second year there turned out to be a Hungarian that I got to know my first year there. So I kind of learned how he talked and, the way that he understood English. And some tips that I learned, or I guess not tips, but talking with them, you don't expect them to understand everything that you mean and the way that you say it. Sarcasm is one thing that goes right over their head a lot of the time. You say things like, "Oh yeah, like I'll get right on that," and he'll just kind of give you like a weird look, and then it'll just turn into kind of a cluster of confusion between both you and the foreigner. One other coworker of mine, he and my Hungarian boss didn't get along because he used sarcasm a lot and was kind of an asshole, but that's beside the point. The use of jargon and slang, that also is kind of hard for them to understand, just because it's more, I feel like it's more of an Americanism. So it's one of those things that we use a lot in our country and culture, but over in Hungary or any Eastern European country, it's just kind of not as common, I guess. Using proper English, that is another one. Sometimes he would say things to me before he would say them to one of our guests, and he'd ask me like, "Oh, is this the right way to say it?" And I tell him, "Oh, you're saying the pronoun wrong." So, uses of a them and their, stuff like that kind of confuses them. And honestly, I have to give him credit because the English language is the hardest language to learn. So if I was a European and I had to learn English, I would be struggling a lot more than he was. And the 3 years that I worked with him, from his first year to his third year, his English improved immensely. And I was impressed. I honestly, when he and his Hungarian friends would come over to the bike shop and they would start talking Hungarian, it was amazing. Like I couldn't imagine being able to speak a different language like that. But it was interesting to see, I guess the growth from his first year to his third year. And, I guess from the first year, he would ask me, "Oh, how should I say this to them?" Or, he was kind of shy, I guess, because he didn't want to embarrass himself to make him look, I don't know, like he just doesn't seem to know what he's talking about, even though he does. He just had a problem communicating it between myself and other coworkers or the guests that we have. But one of the biggest things I learned to do was to be patient and to not judge them because they're trying to speak English, and the fact that they're learning a second language and are attempting to speak it as much as they can is impressive. And brave. I couldn't do it. But I guess the second thing would be to just to listen to them and just kind of, think about what they're trying to say to you before you say anything back, before you respond to them. Just kind of get an understanding of what they're saying to you, how they want to say it, what they're trying to say. And then if you have questions or if something sounds wrong, you ask them to explain it a little bit better. And then you can give them tips on how to, just say, I speak English more fluently. But I'd say it was an interesting experience because working at this resort was the first time I'd ever dealt with, anyone else speaking a different language, as their first language. In college, I never really had to deal with that because, it's a small town in Vermont, small college. It was just one of those eye-opening things where, if I was put in that situation, I don't know what I would do. I've always thought about traveling to, Argentina or, some South American country and just like see, I took 2 years of Spanish and my best friend is Colombian. So I think I know enough Spanish to get by, but I don't think I would be able to, have an actual conversation with somebody else in a different language. And I have to, give props to all these Europeans who are coming over to Highgate, Vermont, in the middle of nowhere to, see what I guess a small part of America is like. But the thing about this resort is that, we get people from all over the world, not just Eastern Europeans. We get people from Australia, New Zealand, France, Vermont, America, obviously. But it's cool to expose yourself to that kind of, the vast array of cultures that, happens in a small town in Vermont. And I've made friends from all over the world, and it's very cool to know. And I guess that's a few tips on how to deal with immigrants or I guess not immigrants, but foreigners who don't speak English as their first language. Thanks.